My name is Lavinia and I'm sort of head of sub-design here at Predictable Revenue, and I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking to you a bit about fast tracking career growth, like things I've learned that I'd like to share and I think could be valuable, and the cliche that I wish I'd known at the beginning of my career, and that hopefully will be helpful to everyone else. So to start with, a bit of a background of like, who am I? Well, like, what's my experience to date? So I started my career back in London in the UK. As you can guess, I'm not from around here. And I started in a fast growth fintech company. It was a sales role, and it was a really great opportunity to work in the very classic, fast-paced, lean, agile startup, that high-growth environment. And I think that's what really started or sparked my interest for working with and in those kind of companies. To put it into context, the company grew 200% in the 2 years I was there. So as you can imagine, it was a really fast-paced environment, and just existing in that kind of company and just seeing how it works, how are things executed, how decisions are made, was a great start and gave me some great insight right from the beginning. So from there, I moved over to manage a corporate accelerator for a large retailer in the UK, the John Lewis Partnership, for those of you who are familiar. And so there I was working to facilitate the working relationship with brand new companies, like really small, really young companies, with like a much larger corporate behemoth. So it was amazing just to really be able to see how these very two different types of companies work, but how they could really complement each other. And so obviously that was super rewarding. Naturally, it had its challenges along the way. You've got two very different styles of working, but that really gave me a great insight into working out how these strategies can line up. And there can be loads of opportunities on both sides in that kind of situation. So after this, I moved to Vancouver, British Columbia, where I am now, and joined Predictable Revenue in August 2018. I started as an account strategist. This is a role where looking after clients, very customer success focused, and I was managing their outbound campaigns and the underlying outbound strategy there for them. And this was obviously a great role. Got to know a load of different clients. Also really cut my teeth at the company, get to know the ins and outs, how it works, how we work, why we work, all the details there. And after about 5 months of this role, there was a lot more focus on doing a lot more testing of methods. Like, everyone familiar with outbound, what works and what doesn't work changes every day. It's such a quickly evolving landscape that it's really crucial to try and understand, okay, what works today, and also crucially, what doesn't work. And there was so much creativity within the account strategist team. Everyone was doing different A/B tests, trying new methods, trying different strategies. But ultimately, it wasn't all really focused on taking a super scientific approach. So we couldn't always be really confident in our results. And so because of this, a program which was named Outbound Labs was born. And some of you may be familiar with Outbound Labs. And the idea of Outbound Labs was to harness all this creativity and get all this testing, kind of rein it in so we could really look at being confident in the results we produced. So this looked like we created hypotheses. We ran controls with different tests we were doing. We made sure we had repeats. So there were lots of different scientific approaches to testing it. So when we had those results, we were like, yes, we know this works. It wasn't kind of a luck of the draw time. It wasn't because of X, Y, Z. We know it was because we changed X variable. It had this output. And Outbound Labs looking for a team lead to head that side of things up. And I applied and took on that role, must have been around February, March time last year. So that was my project to head up, and that was great fun. Really, really good to facilitate the whole team and the whole company. It was completely cross-team effort. To get all those tests under our belt and to really be able to share also externally in a YouTube series, what was working, what wasn't working. Because there are so many questions out there about what's the current state of play with deliverability? Like, what's working on LinkedIn? Should I put a message with a connection request or not? Like, so many different things that everyone kind of has an idea of how it works. And because predictable revenue, we're in a fortunate enough position to be having multiple clients running multiple campaigns. We could test that scientifically. That was all done through Outbound Labs. So from a career perspective, that was super insightful, and it really allowed me to get like really deep into that analytical and like critically thinking about why we're doing what we're doing. How could we make sure we were confident about the results? So I took that on alongside my account strategist role, and did that for the up until the end of the year. So that's me December 19, and at the end of January this year, the head of service design role opened up. So no spoilers, don't think I'm spoiling anything. That's where I am now. Got the job, which is really exciting. But it was a really great opportunity to, level up what I've been doing in Outbound Labs, level up what I've been doing previously, like at the Corporate Accelerator, and deep dive a bit more into like strategy and understanding why things are the way they are. Always like thinking about how we can improve areas, how everything has a knock-on effect, and just being really analytical about all the details, like all the small details and all the bigger picture stuff as well. So that's where I am. In a nutshell, whistle-stop tour. So then I was thinking about, with this, when it comes to like fast-tracking career growth, like how did I do it? I think everyone's progress is going to be different. But I was like thinking about what are some things that are really crucial to the journey, and there are the ones that always come across, that are always shared, and they're all completely super valuable. So you've got like be curious. Like I was saying, being curious was a big part of the two roles. I'm like, be curious, take initiative, step up, like apply for those roles, speak up, share ideas, and like don't be afraid to fail. If you share an idea and it doesn't work, or someone says, "I know that's not really going to work," even the fact you've said it, people are going to remember. Like management leadership, make yourself known to be the person that's like has a bit of courage, like say that, and if it fails, it's not the end of the world. Like it's really not that bad. Also standard short, medium, long-term goals, all the normal stuff you've heard. Ask for advice, big one. Find a mentor, find people to like talk about things, bounce ideas off. No one expects you to know everything. And then finally read. So these are all the pieces of advice and tips that I think are out there and completely valid. But I was like, what are some things that that maybe I didn't read that kind of happened? And I was thinking, oh yeah, that could be a good one to share, or maybe something that I hadn't read elsewhere before. So came up with my top 3. So that's what I'm going to go over. So number 1, so focus on the application of the content you're consuming, not just the volume. So by this, I'm thinking of, there are so many like books, there are so many YouTube videos, there are so many articles, there are so many blogs. There's so much content out there, and a big part to obviously like improving your professional standing, improving your knowledge, like progressing, is to consume it. But like it's so easy to get carried away with just the volume. Like there's always another book that's being recommended. There's always another article. There's always another blog. And definitely read it, look at the volume, but actively focus on like what you're taking away from that specific piece of content. Like if it's a book, think of like what maybe like 1 or 2 points are you going to go and actively try and apply to like how you're working, how you're professional, how you're doing professional activities, maybe your personal side. Because it's so easy to like focus on the volume, like read loads and then think that sounds like a nice idea, but then not actually actively apply it. And I think that's like the really important bridge to gap. So you can really apply like what you're learning. And also on that point as well, like don't be afraid to go and reread books. Like taking away 1 or 2 points from a book that could be like 300 pages may seem like you've read a lot and haven't taken away from a lot from it, but actually it's better to take away like 1 point, actively try and apply it in your like professional life, and then come back to it a year later and take away a different point. You always, if you go and reread a book, you're always going to find something different of value to take away from it. To end in context, so the CEO of my first company said he read The Hard Thing About Hard Things every year, and he reread it every year, and every year he took something different away from it, and he saw everything in a different light. So yeah, don't be afraid to go and revisit content and really focus on how you're actively applying what you're learning from reading. Number 2, train yourself to be productively lazy. So I was like, when I put this in, I should probably make sure I clarify, like, productively lazy. So I'm not just meaning like, how do I work less? Put in different terms, it's based on how to help yourself be more efficient in the work you're doing. I'm definitely not saying like don't work hard. Obviously work hard, but also make sure that you remember that your output isn't equal to the number of hours that you put in. Focus on the value and the quality of the work that you're doing rather than just the time you're putting into it, because the two definitely aren't the same thing. And being efficient, being productive, obviously loads of benefits, don't need to go into those, but it definitely comes to some people a lot more naturally than it comes to others. But how can you improve it? Like, always think about how you're working. Always try and be like curious about, is there a way that I could be doing this faster and still be getting to the same output and still same quality of results? This could be, for example, so if you're often pulling reports, and it's really data heavy, really time consuming, think like, are there ways that you could be reducing the amount of time that takes, like fiddling around with all that data? I don't know, is there a formula that maybe you could be using? Is it really mastering how to use a pivot table? Something along those lines. Like, go and ask someone, Google it. There are always ways to think about how you could be doing something faster. It goes from like day-to-day tasks and also maybe different processes that are going on in your business. So I think there are 5 people that are involved in this process. Could you think, does it actually only need 2 or 3? Are these 2 extra people? What are they adding to this? Is it something they need to be in? Is it something they could be informed of indirectly rather than need to be part of maybe this process? How can you like narrow that down? So actively be critically thinking about how you can improve the work you're doing, improve how you're approaching. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that helped me, because it's easy to get stuck into like muscle memory and you just do tasks day in, day out and don't think about it. Try and actively be thinking all the time, like, how could I improve this? How can I improve the output? How could I be improving how I'm getting from A to B? And this also kind of goes into another point that is around knowing when you yourself are working productively. So not literally just what you're doing, but when you're at your 100% capacity, because we all have great days where, we like get loads of work done, really happy with it, working all day, happy days, it's all great. But we get some days, like tasks just take a lot longer. Really be actively thinking to yourself, like, if you're not at full capacity, or like if you're struggling with that task, you like feel like you're staring at a blank screen, work out what works for you to like give yourself a refresher. This isn't always like, oh, I'll just come back to it tomorrow when I'm feeling better, because obviously reality is not like that. Don't always have the luxury of being able to spend as much time on a task, but what is it that works for you? Is it like going for a 10-minute walk? Do you need to get outside, get some fresh air? Going for a quick run, going to get a coffee? What is there that you can use as your go-to when you're not feeling as productive as you want to be? Go away, come back 10, 30 minutes later, and then really crack on with the task. And that 30 minutes you spent away from your desk could mean that you save, an extra hour on the task itself and are happy with the outcome. So it's all about not letting yourself get into too much habits, too much muscle memory, like always thinking about how you're working, what could be improved. Like, be curious, be analytical about how you're working. Don't just let yourself settle into like too much of a rhythm. And number 3, so summit title, truly own your growth. So I put this one in there because I think when applying for jobs, it feels like every other job spec has as a perk that the company will support you in your professional growth. But I think it's really important to A, truly understand is that the case, and B, like make the most of it. So like if you're at the interviewing stage, find out what this means. Like, does it mean the company, you have a book allowance every month and so they're happy to support your reading? Does it mean they get mentors in or external speakers quarterly to talk on a certain topic? Does it mean they'll support you in courses? Like, ask this in the interview process, And also ask for examples of employees who have made the most of this. Like, has a certain employee taken you up on the offer to support them through a professional course? And that way you should be able to gauge like which companies actually focus on it and which ones like to put as a perk and kind of have it there and don't always do that much about it. And then when it comes to being in a job, like, take advantage of it. Like, it's really easy to get really focused on like your day-to-day job, what you're doing, progressing. But if you have that as a perk, like, order those books, read those books, look for courses you want to take. Like, obviously be mindful of it. Don't do them for the sake of it. Think how is it going to increase the value of what you're working on, the value of your skill set. And then go, like, make your case, take it to your manager, take it to leadership, like really show why you're being proactive and why you want to extend your skills in a certain area. And doing that course could open up loads of doors. It could show you that you actually got this interest in this area, or that, oh, that's something I thought I was interested in, but actually maybe it's this particular nuance. So I think, yeah, to really own your growth and be proactive about it, like, make the most of those opportunities that are there for you. The next one is, so I feel like everything I've spoken about so far is like everything you can do on a positive side of things. How you can be like proactive, how you can learn more. But obviously there are going to be like setbacks. So losing a job, lack of confidence, I'm clear about what you want, like all of these things that have like happened to me and have happened to like countless other people. But I think the main thing with each of them is to understand that it's not going to be the end of the world. Like, it's not the end of your career. Everyone at some point has maybe come across like a challenge they didn't see happening, whether it's being fired and whether it's companies shrinking, whether, especially with COVID, like lots of people are going to be made redundant recently. That's no reflection of their own performance. I'm not saying always look for a silver lining of like these inevitable challenges or these failures. There's not always going to be one, but it's also definitely not like the end of the road. There are always ways that you can circumnavigate what's going on. And on the point about like being clear about what you want, like that's fine as well. Ultimately, I never knew exactly where I wanted my career to take me, or still to take me, only when it came to like a specific title or a specific role or a specific industry. It was just having an interest in a certain area. So all the way back at the beginning, when I was saying started in a really like fast moving company, I was like, it's kind of like the strategy and the critical analysis of like how everything done, how decisions were made, why things were done the way they were. And that's kind of an interest that I've kept throughout the roles where I've changed. So even if it's something as loose as that, as long as you keep that kind of, you have an idea of what that interest is and then keep that thread. And then you'll find that the more you work on that, the more you hone the skills, the more you read, the more you actively apply what you take away from your reading, you'll really be able to kind of like work up. And then when the opportunities do arise, you'll be fully prepped to make the most of them. So I have my last slide here. So I have the link to the Outbound Labs videos that myself and Colin recorded, and they are there. So they're on predictablerevenue.com/outboundlabs. But that is everything from me. Hope it's been somewhat interesting. We've got the next 8 minutes or so for questions. So I'll open it up to any questions.
Right on. Thanks, Lavinia.
And see if they come through. Yeah, no worries.
I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to jump in and start talking about like these are the things I did, and this is like how I deconstruct and reconstruct, what, without coming across as like, here's why I'm so awesome. My mom says I'm cool. So I really appreciate the I guess bravery in coming out and sharing that and sort of taking a risk of like, these are the attitudes and mindsets that impacted me, and just being vulnerable and sharing those. So thank you.
Sure. Welcome. Happy to.
Fantastic. So want to hear, hey, we got Sarah joining too. Although she was here the whole time. I shouldn't be surprised by that. Yeah. She's been here all day. I don't know. I was like, whoa.
Where'd she come from? What's she been doing?
She's been lurking down below. Perfect. So questions for Lavinia. What do you want to know? What do you want to hear?
I think like someone popped something in the chat here.
Perfect.
Linus says, you mentioned about staying curious, but how do you develop your own sense of innate curiosity that helped you to ask the right questions?
Sure, that's a really good question. I think I feel like sometimes people are worried about asking questions, because even though there's a classic, like, no question is a stupid question, there are always questions that people are going to think like, was that the right question to ask or not? I think it's, how have I developed that sense? I think the first thing is, when you're asking questions, like, don't go for the full, okay, I need to ask questions, so I'm going to ask questions for the sake of it. That's not a good way to go. Like, always know why you're asking the questions you're asking. Like, what is the end you're trying to achieve? What is the answer you're trying to get to? Also, don't necessarily always ask them like in a big forum. Like, you know what, if you're a new employee and you want to like be curious, find out why, going into your first town hall and asking a big why for the sake of it in front of the whole company probably isn't the best way to go. Do it like with your colleagues and ask them why. Like, if it's something about how process work, like why do we do things like this? Why do we do things like that? And then ask the managers, and don't be asking why just for someone to answer you. Be asking why because you want to make progress to then answer your next question. So asking why around, why do we do this process this way? Oh, it's because we set this certain expectation with the customer, so we have to do it this way. Oh, then is there a reason we're setting these certain expectations with customers? So trying to think of it as a chain, and always understand, like, why do you want the answer you're asking for? I think it's easy just to ask questions for the sake of it, but always like think about where your questions are going when you're asking them.
Perfect. We've got Sandeep with a question. How did you handle failure in the early part of your career, and how has that changed over the years? I'll answer that. She didn't fail. So
it's just been up from day one. No, it hasn't.
Up into the right.
How did I handle failure? Honestly, at the beginning of my career, badly. Like, when the very beginning of my career, as soon as I graduated, I decided that I wanted to move to London as soon as I possibly could, from my countryside house with my parents. And I wanted to move to London to be with all my friends because they were having the best time. They were like living in houses with friends. They were like partying, having a great time. So I was like, I'm just going to get a job and I'm going to go down. Got a job in recruitment. It lasted for 2 months. It wasn't great, and it wasn't a great fit. Admittedly, I wasn't the best employee either, and I was let go, and it was awful. I didn't know what to do. Took it really badly. But then even maybe like 2 weeks later, in hindsight, I was like, I didn't want to do that anyway. And so I think it's like looking at it initially when failure first hits you, it's always going to be difficult. You're going to take it badly, but then it's the letting yourself be really disappointed and be upset, but then like start thinking about it, like, actually, okay, what does this allow me to do? How am I going to handle it next time? How has it changed now how I handle failure? Now I try and just take the situation like in a more holistic perspective. So it's like looking at like why I failed, like what went wrong. And also like failure isn't necessarily a bad thing as well. Like, I think there's very like failure is bad. Like, it's not. Like, you learn so much from it, and the classic, like, if you fail, at least you tried. So
100%. We've got one from Christina. Before we do, you're going to groan and roll your eyes because I throw this in every time people are talking about failure. But my favorite Jerry Seinfeld quote, and I think it's from Comedians in Cars, and he's talking about with another comedian about, you know, what it's like to bomb and like how to grind it out. And the way he phrased it was now I'm going to draw a blank. Pain is the sensation of experience entering the body. And so that's the, I just love how that, how he frames that up. Because if you look at all those events at the beginning of our careers, nobody jumps off and is off to the races and rockets and is suddenly an overnight success. You know, there might be 1 in a million, but chances are it was, you know, that individual, right place, right time. Right. And I think if you look at the majority of the people that get successful, it was, they worked hard, and that increased their surface area for luck. And so, yes, you did get a little bit lucky, but you need to work hard to do as much increasing your surface area for luck.
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's get to Christina. They say just because you're good at something doesn't mean you'd make a great leader. Can you hit in on the people skills and how to hone those leadership opportunities when you're not in a leadership role actively?
Oh, good question. I think how to hone in on those leadership skills when you're not actively in the role. I think it's being your own leader in your own role. So thinking like, how can I level up what I'm doing in my particular role at the moment? So like personally for yourself. So it's a bit like, how do I work more efficiently? So think about that initially, like on an individual level, like, and have that really like critical thinking there. And then the leadership qualities, I think, and when you're in a team, is being a team player. It sounds really cliche, but it is like super important. And also like bringing ideas to the table. It comes back to that, like, speak up, bring up ideas, don't be afraid to fail. And then if other people see you doing that, and actually even if you're not in like a leadership title role, and then people are naturally going to come to you and start asking questions. They're going to be curious about what you're doing, how you're working. So I think that's a really good way to do it. Like start on like a personal level, like how you're working for yourself. And then within your team, kind of be that one that comes up with the ideas, be the one that asks a question, be the one that like isn't afraid to fail.
Perfect. We've got a couple more here, so we'll keep going. There's so much content out there, whether it's blogs or courses. How have you managed to choose, what course will best serve your next step? So what does your information diet look like?
Oh gosh, it looks like a reading list of about 50 books that's only ever getting longer. But I think it's a case of thinking, firstly, I think it's really important, like, what are you actually most interested in? Like, when you're looking at this list of reading books or like courses or articles, like, what sparks your interest? Like, what are you not reading because you're like, oh, I feel like I have to, but what at the moment are you going to say like, oh yeah, this particular section about this book or how I can apply this book, I think it's going to be quite interesting. Do that, because then if you're inherently interested in it when you start reading it, then you're more likely to actually like absorb it and be able to apply what you're taking away from it. So you know what, like there may be some really dry books out there that you may have to read every now and again, but you know what, at that time, if it's not floating your boat, like don't force yourself to. Then when it comes to the next point, so like you're saying with courses, I'd really look at what do you think is most applicable to like where you want to do and like where you're currently trying to like take your career, your role, how you're trying to progress professionally. And also don't be afraid, if it's like a course or something, don't be afraid to try and get in touch with the people who run the course or other people who have taken the course and just ask them a bit more about it. Like, what did they take from it? How did they find it? Because then you can get a bit more of an insight rather than, just getting like a prospectus for a course. So it's a bit like a blurb for a book. You read the reviews as well, right? So yeah, like give a bit of time thinking where you want to focus first, see what others think and see like what genuinely interests you. Don't force yourself to consume content if you actually aren't really that interested at this moment in time. Come back to it in 6 months. It may be more relevant then.
Okay, and we've got another one here. I'll close that one there. Thanks for the presentation. Oh, you know what? We've got a couple in the chat here. So I'm going to come to Sophia's. Oh, you've got it up there too. Beautiful. Same one. Thanks for the presentation. What do you think about developing your career in big companies? There's so many that are not open for new ideas or better ways to do your job. They just want you to do the specific work that they asked you.
Oh, that is a good question. Honestly, I've been lucky thus far to work in small companies that have been like super open to recommendations, suggestions. When I did work, program manage the corporate accelerator. So working with them as a client made me realize that completely agree. Sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes there is just like so much bureaucracy and red tape and things are done the way they're done because they've always been done that way. But there's always someone in that huge corporation who will also be interested in trying to change things or make things better, whether it's in a certain area of the company, whether it's something as big as like an accelerator, an internal accelerator. I think it's finding these people, whether they're like internal like groups, societies and larger companies that you could like talk to, just finding like-minded people and talking about it. And if you start talking to other people about it, there might be other people who feel the same way. And then whether it's something that you start internally or whether you look at creating maybe the beginning of an accelerator, or start bringing together a project that you can take to a manager or senior. Kind of start small, and there will be other people internally who are thinking the same way as you. Sometimes it's just like a numbers thing, like hunt them down, find them, have a chat with them, see what you can do.
Cool. If you don't mind me building on your answer, I had a chance to interview somebody, Jamie Smith. He's the CRO over at Thought Exchange, and they're a fully distributed company. We talked about sort of scaling up in remote sales, but we did touch on career growth from an early stage, because he worked for some really large companies, Business Objects, then got acquired by SAP. He also worked for Oracle, and a company that Oracle purchased, and now he's with Thought Exchange. His advice was basically, first, nail the job that you were hired to do. So make sure that you are like 10 out of 10 on all of the criteria. And if you don't know what those criteria are, ask your boss, ask how you're doing. And once you're 10 out of 10, then start talking about, okay, what are the things that I need to do in order to earn that next role? Whether it's, take this course, have this education, get this experience in a different location, relocate, those kinds of things. But he said step one was crush your job, like focus on your day job, and don't focus too much on the next role, because I think that was one of the mistakes that he made, and I certainly made that a ton, is just you're hired and you're like, okay, I want to be the CEO in 4 years. And what happens is you end up getting distracted from the job that you need to do today. And if you're not doing, if you're a 7 out of 10 today, but you think you'd be a 10 out of 10, in tomorrow's role or 2 years down the road, you're not going to give yourself that opportunity to get there unless you're a 10 out of 10, because 6 out of 10s don't get promoted, but 10 out of 10s do. Cool. I thought that was really interesting, and just the way that he framed it is like, focus on doing your day job first, and then focus on, here's what I can do next. Really insightful. Is something that I definitely screwed up quite a bit in the early days. Sarah, anything to add on this one?
No, I definitely haven't had as much of a trajectory within the company as Lavinia. Maybe I will, though. Have been there for less time. I was promoted one time, so that's pretty good. But no, I think you make a lot of great points, Lavinia, and it's great to hear about how you choose your content, and how you don't have to kind of like push yourself and grind to become successful at something. You kind of follow your instinct and follow your natural skills, and then kind of work at sharpening the tool as you go. And I think for that reason, it's a lot more attainable than maybe a lot of people think that it is. Maybe you're not going to have the same trajectory that you once thought maybe you would have, but I think everybody has got so much growth potential once they figure out where to kind of focus their skills and talents.
Yeah, completely.
Perfect. Well, we have another, let me see here. We've got our next presentation coming up. You probably want to sleep through this one. Yeah, 2:45 Pacific time. So we got 7-8 minutes here coming up. And we're going to be talking about how to, it says communicate genuine empathy for B2B pain points. I massaged the title. I played around with it a little bit. It's basically how to use empathy and relevance to write messaging that converts. And so there's a couple pretty key learnings in there. And to use Nathan's framework, there's one thing that if you're not doing, you are not going to get response rates. You're not going to get responses. You're not going to book meetings, and you're not going to actually profit from your outbound efforts. So stay tuned in 7-8 minutes, and I'll tell you about what you need to do if you want to actually get people to reply to your emails.
Nice.
Well, thanks guys for having me. And if anyone else is watching has any more questions, I'm on the Slack community, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, and happy to connect and have a chat.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lavinia, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Bye.
Bye, Lavinia.
See ya.